Welcome back, everyone, once again to the Football Goons podcast. This week, we're starting a brand new series here on the pod where we discuss and debate the landscape of each of the four major offensive positions in the NFL. We'll discuss the state of each position and look into the future a little bit, even to kind of see how things may change over the next couple of years. We're kind of approaching this as a new and fresh way to look at the offseason, not just look at, some of the battles that might be going on around the league, but take a little bit of a deeper dive position by position and look at how things have, presented themselves heading into this year. So it's very much experimental. We're looking forward to it. And, we may tweak things a little bit as we go, but we think we're going to have a lot of fun doing this. And we think it's going to be a good listen as well. So, guys, we're going to jump right into things here in just a second. But we had a very interesting debate last week. From time to time, we throw out these one's got to go kind of things. So I'm going to throw just a random one out here because we kind of touched on it just a little bit, but I think it'll be fun to just, not everybody really participated in it. So if one's got to go between Mexican food, Italian food, Chinese food, and then what was the fourth one? I'm forgetting. I'm blanking. All of a sudden. Barbecue foods. Which one has to go for you?
Can't believe you're making me relive this nightmare.
Well, not everybody participated in it.
Miles was stressed out for like a week about this. Now you're bringing it up.
It's not over yet. I can't eliminate one of those things. It's brutal.
If I have to, like, gun to my head, I have to eliminate one. I guess I could live without Mexican. If I don't think I could. Honestly, I couldn't live without like barbecue fried chicken or Italian food or even Chinese food for that matter, because I love me a good Chinese buffet. So I guess I'd probably have to pick Mexican at that point, and I'd be sad to do it.
I'm not sure I want to live without one of those four.
Yeah,
I don't want to go on in life.
You got to do it.
My last answer was barbecue, and I think I got to stick with that. And nobody answered this. Does that include cheeseburgers?
I don't think cheeseburgers. That's just
all right. Well, I'll eliminate barbecue. Unfortunately,
man,
I love Taco Tuesday. I can't.
That's
Imagine never having a taco again, or even just like nachos.
Is that even living?
Not to me, because I got rid of barbecue.
You can get busy living, or you can get busy dying.
I would get rid of Italian. It will be painful, but like,
does Rocco go with it?
Oh, you shut your mouth.
if he does, that's extra incentive. So. No, I would get rid of Italian. Like, it's not that huge of a thing for me. I'm not like real huge on pasta and things. The hardest thing would be like sauce. You know what I mean? That would be the hardest part.
Who the heck eats pasta without sauce, dude?
No, I'm just saying like you have like chicken parm with the sauce. You have meatballs with the sauce. Like the pasta, whatever.
Honestly, I would die if I cut Italian food out of my diet. Because I wouldn't have enough to eat during the course of a week.
Would you be think from the fam?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I'd have to show up for family functions and just not eat food that day.
Ever for any family event. I guess I'd pick barbecue, begrudgingly and miserable about it. But I don't have a good explanation. I'm just sad now. I'm probably
wait. Well, let me say this. Can we cheat here? Like, if I can have fried chicken, but not barbecue chicken,
I don't think fried chicken is a barbecue food. No. That's like pulled pork and sausage and brisket and those kind of things.
Yeah.
See, I can have sausage with my Italian meals. So, if you're telling me, I guess I would change my answer then, because if you're telling me all I got to give up is like barbecue chicken and like spare ribs, then I think
steak too. Steak's gone.
Yeah, steak's gone.
You can't have steak. So.
Then it's still Mexican. Then it's still Mexican.
We've got to go. We've got to get to the quarterbacks because two things are going to happen. We're never going to stop talking about this. or we're going to stop and everyone's going to be so depressed. It's going to be the worst podcast.
I'm already there, man. I'm already there.
Not just our worst, mind you, the worst podcast ever on the air.
Wow.
Maybe next week we'll do something like less depressing. Like, what would you get rid of? Like getting stabbed,
Yeah.
getting punched in the head. They're just stuff that would be easy to get rid of. All right, let's get into things here. All right, so let me just throw this right out of the gate here. How this is broken down is in tiers. So we've got the elite, the perennial Pro Bowlers, the brass ring group, and I'll get into more explanations of these as we go. We've got the rest, which, that's like the Joe Flacco group, and the young guns.
Joe Flacco's not in the elite group in this one?
He's the poster child of the rest.
Okay.
He's paid elite, but
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. So, and how I put these in perspective was I took a couple compilations that are out there from a couple different sources and sites and things who do analysis of position grades, and they grade how each team stacks up at their starting position. So I kind of worked from there, and then also sprinkled in a little bit of public perception as well. So there is a little bit of a hint of like my tinkering in here, but this is a lot of public perception and a lot of analysis on positional grades, specifically tonight at the quarterback. So the elite group, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. Now, we could debate whether or not anyone else should be in this grouping. We probably will. But I don't think anyone debates that these three guys, everyone feels are, at or near the top still at this point in the NFL. So age could be a factor here, but which of these guys do you believe will exit this group first?
I mean, really the only way to answer that question is to say which of these guys you think is going to retire first. Because I don't think there's a good argument to say any of them is going to leave the group while they're playing. I mean, Brady obviously belongs by any metric in the top three of all time, let alone the top three current starting quarterbacks. And, we've been waiting for him to fall off, and he just keeps winning the AFC. I mean, he just won the MVP, over 40 years old. So, Breeze, again, we keep waiting for him to fall off. He's probably a top three pure passer of all time, and he does have a ring, so he absolutely belongs here. Rodgers has a ring, and honestly, it's crazy just to say, he might have had the most disappointing career of any of these guys because it's shocking that he only has one ring. Yeah. But still one of the best ever. So I can agree with, you said, and Rocco was nodding along, that we may be able to add a guy or two here, but these three belong in this first tier for sure. And I won't guess which one's leaving first. It's whoever retires first.
I will guess. I think we're going to see Breeze leave before we see Brady leave. I think Brady is really, really cocky and arrogant.
Leave on his own, or leave because he's just not as good anymore?
Leave on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, like, honestly, like, I could see Breeze walking away after this year,
yeah,
whether they get it done or not. I think Tom is really stubborn, and he really wants to, I think he really wants to prove to the world that he can be the guy who played till he was 44, 45. Like, I don't think I mean, at this point, it can't possibly be about anything else other than proving that. You already have the most rings. You have all the stats and the rings to go with it. So you're going to go down as the best in history. And that pains me to say, but you're going to go down as the best in history. So what else are you possibly playing for at this point other than, I mean, a love of the game, but to prove that you can be the guy that played until he was 44.
Yeah, I think Breeze too. And I agree with both of you guys. It's not because any of them are going to just go out and they're just going to be terrible all of a sudden. That's just not going to happen. And I guess it's Breeze because I just don't see the care in him as much. Not competitive nature. It just seems like he's going to be like, yeah, I'll hang it up now. I've had a good career. I'm done. Rodgers is only 34 years old. I mean, that dude probably has 10 more years in him. So who knows about Brady? I agree. I think it is. Some of it probably is pride, sure, but I think a lot of it's just competitive nature. Just it's wired in him. And I feel like just by hearing them both, he's wired a lot different than Drew Brees is. So I think Drew Brees can hang it up before him.
I actually think it's Tom. And
I hope you're right.
Coming from me.
God, I hope you're right.
Coming from me, that's probably a bit of a surprise because I am a Tom Brady apologist. But I feel like what the Saints are doing is building a team that can prolong the career of Drew Brees. Well, ironically, what the Patriots are doing is making nobody want to play football for them anymore. So like it's just wearing and grating on them. And I think some of the discussion about like, hey, Brady hasn't told anybody he's definitely coming back this year or whatever. The fact that clearly Giselle wants him to be done. His family wants him to be done. I think that is going to weigh on him. So, if they don't get it done this year or they do get it done this year, maybe they look back and Tom says, look, I wanted to prove a point, but I also want to go out on top on my terms. I'm kind of done dealing with all this Patriot way kind of stuff. Whereas Breeze, he could probably do 2 or 3 more years with the way they're building that team. So
he's healthy all the time.
Yeah, and he doesn't get banged around too much. So, I could see him sticking around. So for me, I would think it's Brady. All right, so if you need to win one game, which of these 3 guys are you taking?
I don't think you can argue against Tom Brady here.
Yes,
it's still him for me. He has 34 fourth quarter comebacks. He's second all time, only behind Peyton, and he has 53 game winning drives. I don't think there's a lot to discuss. He's the best quarterback of all time, most likely the best comeback quarterback of all time, and the only really reason that Peyton is ahead of him is because Peyton was losing more times than him. So that's the only reason he has more.
I said it like this. I was legitimately trying to find stats like that could possibly, be in favor of the other 2. And I got to the point where I was like, at this point, I'm just trying to find stats to prove that it's not Tom.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all you're doing.
So that proves that it's Tom.
That proves that it's Tom.
I didn't want it to be him.
I do have some numbers that are kind of amazing. First off, without even going into anything else, Tom Brady's only ever lost 65 games, including the playoffs.
Crazy.
He's been a starter since my freshman year in college. You guys were all in high school. Like, that's how long he's been playing. He's lost 65 games. That's amazing. What's on top of that, 130 more starts than Aaron Rodgers, only 10 more losses in 130 more starts. Breeze, a lot closer to the starts number. Brady has 27 more starts than Breeze, but Breeze has lost 47 more games than Tom Brady.
Wow.
And rough, they pretty much were starters at the same time. I think Tom has a year on Drew, but I mean, 47 more losses. And Drew Brees has largely been a winner in his career. It's not like we're talking about some guy who's going 2-14 every year. So, if it's purely winning, it's Tom. He has the most rings. He wins all the time. He's only lost 65 games. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. He just wills teams to win. Like, yes, there were times when they had really great teams. They have, the Randy Moss years where, they're just dominating people.
And he goes 16-0 in a regular season.
Right. But, you can't really tinker too much with the fact that since I've been a sophomore in high school, he's lost 65 games.
Crazy.
Like, that's insane. Like, the Browns do that in like 6 years.
And you guys wonder why I'm miserable when we talk about football.
No, we don't. We know. We get it. Just you kind of touched on the teams. I know the teams are different, and largely the Pats have been better than the Saints and even the Packers, but he's like 210 and 65. They haven't been that good. It's him.
Right. Yeah. Just
210 and 65. Oh,
that's insane.
God.
A lot of those against the JTS.
Oh.
All right, listen, make a case for someone who isn't in this elite tier, kind of by perception or by grades, who should be.
I'm going to get.
Go ahead, Moss.
I'm going to give you 2. Personally, I think Russell Wilson.
You're just a big fat rule breaker, man.
No, I'm giving you 2. Russell Wilson's already there in my eyes. He is absolutely.
I could not agree more.
He's absolutely already in the top tier of quarterbacks. He's as good a playmaker as the league has right now. He's got a ring. He wins largely most of his games. Again, a lot to do with the team around him, at least previously. But Russ already belongs. And I will say, with the repeat of last season, I think Carson Wentz has to be there as well. If he comes back and plays like anywhere near the way he did last year, he's absolutely in the elite tier as well.
I feel like I could make an argument for a couple, but Russ has to be in the group for me. He's the guy I said, and he threw 3,983 yards, 34 touchdowns, only 11 picks last year, added 586 rushing yards and 3 more scores on a trash team. They went 9-7, and with an average quarterback, they might have won 2 games, and that's probably a stretch.
They scored one offensive touchdown that wasn't him.
It's ridiculous. He has a ring, so he has that argument too. His worst season was 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And not to knock Doug Baldwin, but Doug Baldwin's the best receiver he's ever had. Everybody on this list and the next list has a receiver twice as good as Doug Baldwin, if not more than that. So that's the biggest one for me. Even Cam Newton had Steve Smith, even if it was closer to the end of his career. Cam's rookie year, Steve had 1,394 receiving yards. So everybody on these lists has far, far better weapons. Maybe not running back because, obviously Lynch was a beast. But as far as receivers go, everybody has 1, 2, 5 better than Russ had.
Russ is doing it with less than almost anybody in the league. One of my favorite stats that I was looking up is they used to say that like a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio was like Hall of Fame border, and Russ is I looked it up today. He's 1 touchdown shy of being 3-to-1.
It's crazy.
That's insane. So not only is
trash,
not only is he your best player, not only is he doing it with less, but he's doing it at a higher level than almost anybody ever, and getting better as time goes on.
Yeah.
I kind of counted on at least somebody saying Russ.
All of us.
So I purposely went a different direction, and this might elicit a groan or two, but I think Ben Roethlisberger has to be in this category.
I agree. I agree with you. He was my second guy.
Listen, I think he has to.
Yes.
We kind of have this perception of the Steelers that, yes, they play defense, they run the ball, and Roethlisberger kind of manages things, but that really hasn't been the case, especially lately. The Steelers have had 1 losing season since Roethlisberger has been their quarterback. It was a 7-8 record in 15 games that he played back in 2006, his 3rd year in the league. Since then, they finished 8-8 once, but they've had a winning record every single year. The guy completes surprisingly a decent percentage of passes at 64%. He throws the ball away a lot, but if I'm not worried about a fantasy football perspective, I don't care about that because a lot of the risks, quote unquote, that he is taking is because he gets beat around so much. This is a guy who just gets hammered, and he plays through injuries all the time. Yes, he's got a flair for the dramatic. I think he is a little bit of a drama queen in that regard, but he's still a very tough guy. He's just doing it for a long period of time. I know we don't there's this kind of aura about him where it's hard to like him. And I know, Deal, you live, in Pittsburgh. So it might be different than the national perspective. And even nationally, it's kind of worn off a little bit after some of that early stuff. But, this is a guy who just does it at a high level all the time. It's not always the prettiest, but he just finds ways to win.
I agree with everything you're saying. I think the only thing that really holds me back from him, and take this for what it's worth, I mean, he's a gritty guy and he's a tough guy, but you're talking about a guy who's been in the league now for 13 years, and he has 2 16-game seasons. If you're going to be in the elite level for me, I need to count on you every week.
Yeah, he's got 5 15-game seasons too. So, I mean, it's,
What I'm saying is he's always going to miss time. He is reliable to miss time. That's the only thing reliable about him.
You know what? I'm going to save mine for the next question.
All right.
So go ahead.
All right, so that's going to wrap up our elite section. We're going to move into this perennial Pro Bowler section now. So, listen, there are guys here who certainly you could make a case who could be in or near that elite. There are guys who you might not feel are in this realm either. But the general consensus here is that you're going to have a guy who's going to perform well every single year. He's going to be a Pro Bowl candidate. He's going to put up good numbers. His team is going to generally win. And the names in this group are Ben Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, Phillip Rivers. And even from the perspective of Andrew Luck, I think if you maybe get rid of some of the injury stuff, he might have been in that first group. So, it's tough with some of these guys, but Is there anyone in this group that you feel is outright overrated?
Ben Roethlisberger. But I don't know. Like for me, I always felt like he got more credit than he was due. And I'm not going to say he's overrated in a sense that I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback over his time in the league. And maybe even approaching that all-time top 10. I mean, I'm not going to crush Ben. I think he's a great player. I'm not going to agree with Rock. I'll agree with you on the toughness thing. I don't care if the guy's playing 15 games. Some of the stuff he plays through, a lot of guys are playing 11, 10 games when he's playing 15. So I'll take that. But for me, yeah, it is the defensive thing, South. You kind of glossed over it. But when they did win the 2 Super Bowls, that was a defensive team, 2005 and 2008. They've become more of an offensive team, and they're not winning it. And on top of that, the numbers he's putting up, well, the guy's been throwing to Plaxico Burress, Hines Ward, Santonio Holmes, now Antonio Brown. I mean, he's had stud wide receivers this whole time through. He's had Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker. Rashard Mendenhall was a beast. I don't know what – he fell off quickly. But when he was good, he was as good as it got. And now Le'Veon Bell. I mean, the skill position players the Steelers have had over his time, I feel like any of the other 5 guys you have up here would have won multiple Super Bowls since 2008 with that same roster and coaching staff that Ben has had. I mean, if you just flip him with his draft classmate, Phillip Rivers, I mean, you can't guarantee, obviously, something that can't happen, but Phillip Rivers has at least 3 rings if he's a Steeler all the way up through. I believe that because I think he's just an overall better player than Ben. He's smarter than Ben. He makes good decisions. And Ben is trash on the road. That's the reason that they're not winning more rings is because he can't win in New England. Now, most people can't win in New England.
That's unfair.
It's a little unfair, but he's just not a good player on the road. And that part of the reason you have to keep going to New England in January is because you're losing in Cincinnati in October because you play like trash on the road.
Yeah. No, I listen, this is going to be a very unpopular opinion in this group, but I have a really hard time putting Luck here just because I don't know what – I mean, if the injury had never happened, he wouldn't be in this group. He'd be in the elite group. I agree with that comment. But the injury did happen, and I have no idea where we're going to see him now. So I have a real hard time putting him in this group. I would have rather see him in that brass ring group of like the guys who I think could take that next step. But I need to see Andrew Luck throw a football. And I don't think that's out of the question. Like, I think that's a legitimate argument at this point. So we need to see him throw a football again.
Even before the shoulder, wasn't it like a ruptured spleen? I mean, the guy hasn't been healthy since 2014.
It's so hard, too, because when
the ruptured spleen is that thing that's like, that's a freak injury. That's not happening all the time.
I'm just building on what you're saying where the best ability is availability, and he hasn't had it in 4 years.
Yeah, you can't make the club in the tub. So, like, but if you're doing an analysis, the hardest part right now is pinning Andrew Luck. Like, whether it's for fantasy, like for giving a grade for the strength of a position at your starter, like you kind of have to assume he's going to be healthy. Because you can't ride the fence one way or another. So I think people tend to lean toward, look, if this guy's healthy, he's really good.
Yeah. He's probably the best quarterback in the league if he's healthy, just pure talent-wise. I mean, he drugged the Colts in 2014 to the AFC Championship with a trash roster.
Yeah,
with T.Y. Hilton and essentially garbage. Yeah. Sorry, Deal.
That's the truth.
Anybody else we feel overrated?
Yeah, I'm also gonna. I know we don't do this, but Miles got 2 before, so I'm taking 2 now. I'm of the opinion.
If you just want to pile on Luck more, you can just quit.
No. I'm of the opinion that other than the 2015 version of Cam Newton, that I have a real problem with this. I just do. Like, I'm sorry. Like, he hasn't proved that he can consistently do it. I mean, he got them back to a playoff team this year, which is great, except for the fact that they also ran the ball better this year than they have in the last 2 years before that. The defense stepped up big time. Like, I feel like, listen, I still think Cam is a top 10 talent in this league. I'm not saying he's not, but like, there still are shades of hangover Cam in there. And unlike anybody else on this list, and I don't, and I'll say this very boldly. Unlike anyone else on this list, when Cam's having a bad day, everybody knows that Cam's having a bad day, and Cam plays like crap. Like, if Andrew Luck's having a bad day, he might be able to play through that. If Tom Brady's having a bad day, he is going to play through that. When Cam's having a bad day, Cam sucks. And then we got to watch him get dressed up like he's going to church on Sunday and listen to him and his ridiculous things that he says in these post-game.
I don't know anybody that dresses like that to go to church. Looks like he's going to Banana Joe's on Friday night.
Cam's grandma dressed
exactly.
like that.
I don't know. Like, his attitude to me sucks, and
You're letting the fact that you don't like the guy.
I love the guy.
Change the fact.
Listen,
clearly.
When Cam's dancing, when Cam's on fire and Cam's dancing, I love Cam. But I don't want to see Cam, moping in a press conference after a loss because he played like crap. Like that. That's just that guy.
I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
I like how genuine the guy is. I think he's the most criminally underrated player probably in the league. He drugged Philly Brown, Jericho Cotchery, and Ted Ginn to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, you said Steve Smith earlier. We said Steve Smith. That's it. Yeah. He's had no one else to throw the ball to that I will fully believe is better than me.
Well, Greg Olsen, but
okay, at wide receiver, purely at the receiver position. Yeah. I mean, when we're hyping up Kelvin Benjamin, come on, man.
You better not say a bad word about Devin Funchess.
Listen, I'd be cranky too if I just lost the game knowing I was the best player on the field and couldn't do squat because no one can get open.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, but you know what? Tom plays with some pretty trash receivers too over his career, and he makes them look good. Like, you know what I mean? Like this, at some point, we have to stop just making excuses because there are other teams. We just praised Russell Wilson for all he does with no talent around him other than Doug Baldwin, if that's a legitimate argument. But then we're going to make excuses for Cam because he doesn't have those guys.
I appreciate what you're saying.
It's a different conversation too. I'm not putting Cam Newton in that elite tier. He's not my answer to who's next. I just think to say he doesn't belong here is ridiculous.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying because you have a good point. Like with Cam, when Brady knows that the talent around him isn't as good and he needs to, hype them up, he gets fired up and he does it. Cam gets pouty. So, you can't deny that.
Those are also apples and oranges, Tom Brady and Cam Newton.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We're comparing the guy to Brady and Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But to Rocco's point, if he was a little bit more of that guy personality-wise that rallied the guys instead of being the guy that everybody looked and said, oh, Cam quit. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's the point that I'm trying to get at and that I'm trying to, embrace for Rocco. So.
If Cam Newton had Thomas Davis's attitude, they would win that division and be in the NFC Championship game every year. Because Cam Newton is the most talented player on the field on any given day, pretty much. So something is amiss here. Because if you have the most talented quarterback in the league or the most athletic and talented quarterback in the league, and you're missing the playoffs every other year, that's a problem.
His head is a miss. So there's nobody can argue that.
Okay, but his head is the reason I'm arguing that he doesn't belong in this group, or that he's at least overrated, and maybe is not on this. Like Phillip Rivers is not anywhere near as talented as Cam Newton, and yet somehow is that leader and that everybody rallies around. Not that Rivers is going to championships. I understand that, but
he hasn't made the playoffs since 2007.
But we all know that that's not really on Phillip Rivers as much as it is the rest of the team.
So Rivers' team sucks, and that's cool. Cam's team sucks. It's Cam's attitude.
But when Cam's head is on straight, they make the Super Bowl.
This is true.
When Cam's head is not on straight,
it was only once.
When Cam's head is not on straight, they don't make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so just to kind of touch on something real quick here, I talked about this from a fantasy perspective, and I don't think Matt Ryan is a bad quarterback, but I don't think he belongs in this second tier personally. I think that he should be more in that brass ring because I don't think he's really, he won the MVP award 2 seasons ago. He had a fantastic year. He led the team to the Super Bowl. But like other than that, like what has he really consistently done to really show that he's near the top? You know what I mean? Like I think that he's just a guy who's likable. He performs highly, but like when it really comes down to it, he's had, quite a few times where they've come up short in the playoffs or, missed out on the playoffs altogether. And I feel like he's more of a brass ring guy still at this point, even though he's a little bit more veteran than a lot of those guys.
See, that's the problem with these groupings, because like if you don't fit into the perennial Pro Bowler list and you're 30 years old, you can't be in the brass ring group, which means that you're just in the rest group, and we, unfortunately, I'm not ready to put Matt Ryan in the rest group, but like you can't just throw him into the middle group and be like, well, he's that guy who needs to take a next step. He's 30 years old. He's been in the league for 10 years. Like there's no next step for Matt Ryan. You are what you are.
All right, so then with that thought, just this quick last question on this group. Of the players in this group without a Super Bowl title, which one do you think would be catapulted to the next level by getting one?
I don't think any of them, honestly. I mean, it's hard to answer it. I think they all need it as far as a legacy goes. But if we're literally taking tonight on its surface where you say the next level is elite, like, okay, Rivers needs it to join the 04 class with Ben and Eli. He needs the ring. Ryan needs it to validate himself in this tier even, I think. Cam needs it. Maybe Cam's probably my answer to this. I think he's an elite player if he wins the ring. But I think for the most part, these guys are kind of at their ceiling of the ones that don't have a ring already for me.
I think it's Andy. Because if he wins a ring, especially within these next 2 years, it shuts up everybody that he can't do it. Not saying that because Rocco just said him, but it shuts up everybody that like he can't come back from the injury. He's never going to be right. And everybody knows that he is at the top of the list as far as talent goes if he's healthy and if anybody blocks for him. So if they win a Super Bowl, it's 100% because of him. And he came back and did it with not much to go around him. So, I mean, the defense got better. It didn't take much. The line got better. It didn't take much. So if he wins it, it's because he is the player that everybody thought he could be, which is elite.
Yeah, I think it's luck because people want to put him there, but there's those couple of questions.
Yeah.
Can he stay healthy? If he does it, most likely he's going to stay healthy to do it.
Right.
Can he play through a playoff run where he's not inconsistent with turnovers?
Yeah.
If he does it, most likely he's going to have to do that. So it really silences the only two remaining questions that there would be about him.
Health and taking care of the ball.
The play on the field, kind of answers itself already. So I think that's why the answer is him.
Yeah.
I actually said that for any of the three, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, or Andrew Luck, they all have enough career left that if they win one, I think it catapults them into that top group. Because we're going to be talking about who are the best three quarterbacks in the league in the next 4 to 5 years. Rodgers, Brady, and Breeze are going to be done pretty much. You know what I mean? So who's the next three that we expect to be in that group? Well, you know what? If Matt Ryan or Cam Newton or Andrew Luck puts a run together and wins a title, they're going to be in that group.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's take a quick second here and talk about our friends at Gorb. That's GHORBH. If you're on social media, you've probably seen the Gorb movement, the hashtag Gorb, GHORBH. And it's always, some real positive message, inspiring message, somebody looking good in the Gorb swag, putting it out there and reminding everybody that in life, you've only got two choices. You can either get hungry or you can be hungry. And we're reminding you right here tonight as you listen to this podcast live or after the fact that those are the only two choices for you. You can get hungry and go after those things that motivate you and stop making excuses about it, or you could be hungry and keep making those excuses and keep allowing yourself to be held back from going after your dreams, those things that you want to pursue. We encourage you to check them out at GHORBH.com. That's Gorb.com. You can go there, find all the great gear for men, for women, for kids that you've seen all over social media with the Gorb movement. They've got all kinds of colors, all kinds of styles, sizes. They've got something for everybody. If you don't like it, you're really trying not to like it, basically, because they've got you covered 100%. Gorb.com, GHORBH.com. All right, guys, let's talk about a group here it's kind of going to be a fun group, and I'm a little worried that we may get caught up on a lot of time in this group, which is fine because some of the other guys might not be as fun to talk about. That is the brass ring. These are the guys that there's a perception out there that all of the talent is there, but they really have not shown, whether it's because of an injury, the team around them, maybe just the amount of time in the league so far, that they've really not reached out and grabbed that brass ring yet. Among this group, we've got Carson Wentz, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff. So a good mix here of some guys that have a couple years and some guys who are pretty young along in their careers. Whether it's injuries, not being in the league long enough, that all comes into play, like I said. Who's most likely to make a jump up into one of these upper groups, and why?
I actually think that's a great question. As a whole, I don't know if this is a controversial statement or not. I like these guys more than the last group as a whole. But maybe it's the youth thing. I see the potential. More than yeah. But I think any one of them I think could be an answer here. I already sort of said my piece on Wentz. I think he's an elite tier if he just repeats even close to what he did. But outside of that, I might say Matthew Stafford. I think for him to take that Lions squad, we just saw the Vikings play in the NFC Championship game. We just saw the Packers still have a pretty decent record in spite of Aaron Rodgers being gone. I think if Stafford can overcome Rodgers and now the Vikings with Kirk Cousins to win this NFC North title, a roster definitely a notch or two below those guys. If he can take that, win a division, win a playoff game, maybe even two, I don't understand how he's not at least a second-level guy with guys like Andrew Luck and Matt Ryan and Cam Newton, because he's got all the talent and he's got a worse team than a lot of these other guys do, and he's done as much as any of them. So why would he not be in that tier?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Matthew Stafford. I love Matthew Stafford. He might be one of my favorite players in the NFL that's not a Jet. I just don't think he's in that group. I think Matthew Stafford is what he is, and that's a very good quarterback. He's just not there. This is a guy who's been in the league for not.
Who can jump to the next group? Like, I don't think he's there now.
I don't think he's. I'll say it like this: I don't think there's anything he can do to make them jump. You know what I mean? Like that, he is what they are, and that's a very good quarterback. And he's going to throw for 4,000 yards. He's going to throw for 25 touchdowns, and that's great. But until the rest of the team around him gets better, Matthew Stafford is not going to be that guy for you. I just don't think. I think Wentz obviously is the obvious answer here, but other than him, because I think it is the obvious answer, I think Goff has a really good chance to take that next step and be in that next group. I think, if he has another year like he did last year, we'll probably be talking about him as a Pro Bowler this year, and that would start as a young guy and enter in year 3, and then going forward, we could see him as a perennial Pro Bowler, and that team is built to win now. So if this comes down to Rams Eagles, for the NFC crown, we've all joked around and said pretty much that those two teams should be in it, and it's a NFC team wins the Super Bowl type of year. The NFC is just superior at this point. So with all that being said, I think Goff is the easy answer of the guy for me who takes that jump to the next step to becoming a Pro Bowler. I don't think any of Carson maybe, but I don't think any of these guys can go from where they are to elite. So
do you have any fear with Goff? Because I considered him, and then the more I thought about it, listen, the Rams made a ton of additions on the defensive side of the ball. But for me, Gurley is still going to drive them. So do you think from a public perception, especially in a fantasy football world where we live, where Todd Gurley is going to be the first pick in most drafts, at worst, third? I mean, I'm not sure how he's going to fall to 3, but, it's possible, I guess. Do you think if they have that team success when everybody's fantasy championship was won by the team that had Todd Gurley, are people going to say, yeah, Goff does a good job of steering the ship, but he's certainly not the reason they're an NFC Championship team.
I think worst case scenario, we look at Jared Goff the way we look at Ben Roethlisberger. You know what I mean? Like,
that's I've already said that's a negative for me.
Yeah. No, but like
exactly.
But Ben Roethlisberger, I guess my point is Ben Roethlisberger in this case would be the floor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Worst case scenario, he's Ben Roethlisberger and leading a good team and steering the ship on a team driven by a good running back, good receivers, and a good defense. Best case scenario for him is he gets the recognition he deserves in said great offense and is now a step above Ben. So
I actually said that I won't be shocked if it's any of them. I know that's a Miles cop-out answer.
That's what I do. I like the
but I won't be surprised if it's any of these guys. I mean, Carson obviously dominated last year. Kirk, he is elite already as far as talent goes and hasn't had a lot around him. Like, he's made some pretty not great guys look pretty great. And, Jameis had a down year, but we thought he was headed in that direction. He still has Mike Evans. They could bounce back quickly. Deshaun Watson, a lot of people are ranking him, which is crazy, as the number 2 fantasy quarterback in the league this year. He's not, but just in case you want to know, he's not the number 2 quarterback. Jared Goff, he threw for 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 picks last year. Took a monstrous jump from his first year to his second year. And now he gets Brandon Cooks, who's better than anybody he had. So he could easily take the step. But I'm going to say something crazy here. I think Matthew Stafford is the most underrated quarterback of all time. Number 1 of all time. He just does it every single year. And then when we were like, the only reason he does it is because of Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson left. He still big fat did it every year. Right. The last 2 years, he's done the same thing. This essentially the same numbers he had with Calvin Johnson. No, I'm not saying Matthew Stafford made Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson was unbelievable. But Matthew Stafford is unbelievable with or without him. So
if anything, Calvin Johnson probably hurt Matthew Stafford
because
Matthew Stafford forced it to him. You know, so no. And listen, I love Matthew Stafford
as much as he could hurt somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I love Matthew Stafford. I just like he's a 4,000 yard, 25 touchdown passer,
and nobody talks about him.
But you know why nobody talks about him? Because he's a 9-7 quarterback.
But his team is terrible every year.
Okay, but Andrew Luck's team is terrible, and they're 11-5. Tom Brady, we talk about all the time how it's Tom Brady, Gronkowski, and nothing, and he's 12-4. And Russell Wilson is 11-5 and 10-6.
But all of their nothings is more than Matthew Stafford's nothing. Like his nothing is nothing.
At some point, nothing just has to be nothing. Like
it is nothing.
Like. I know this sounds like I don't like Matthew Stafford, but the three of you know that I do. But like, there are guys who are 4,000 yard passers, and that's what they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like,
who else? Who else is similar numbers as him?
Probably Kirk.
Similar, yeah. Kirk is
on
right
a consistent
there with him,
basis.
You know, but I mean, like. What if and I hate to use this as an example, but I think it's a pretty good one. What if Matthew Stafford is Dan Marino?
He's one of the 3 greatest quarterbacks of all time.
With no ring, and he'll never get there.
But that's exactly my point, though.
And we'll always look at Matthew Stafford as a Pro Bowl quarterback. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not even making Pro Bowls at the rate that Dan Marino was because there are so many other talented quarterbacks around Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, all those guys that he's got to compete against. So Matthew Stafford's not even making the Pro Bowls with these ridiculous numbers. So what he needs is a solid running game to take them to the next step, which then diminishes his stats and makes him look worse, like he couldn't do it by himself. So you know what I mean? Like, if everything improves around Matthew Stafford, people will criticize him because he's not the reason they took the next step. It's because everybody around him got better.
I think a lot of it is some bias, kind of, not necessarily bias, but the perception of where he plays. Like, we kind of look at Detroit as like, oh, they're the Lions. You know what I mean? Like, they're the lovable loser of the NFC. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just that perception is out there. We kind of expect that at some point things are going to unfold for the Lions. So, you know, a lot of what he does gets overshadowed. I think he's got an identical situation to the guy that I picked, which is Kirk Cousins. All they do is just put up really, really good numbers and play really exceptionally well at the quarterback position, but don't have particularly great teams around them. And unfortunately for them, have had to play against really, really good teams in their division as well over the last couple of years. So, you know, for me, it would have been really easy to say Carson Wentz. If he comes back, he's healthy. I think it's pretty obvious that he was heading toward an MVP year last year. If he does that again, you know, he catapults himself. Deshaun Watson, I think everybody feels great about him. Jared Goff. But the more fun answer is Kirk Cousins, because ever since 2015, when he became the guy for the Redskins, all he's done is thrown for over 4,000 yards every single year, averaged 27 touchdowns. Deal, you were generous when you said he had not much around him. He had like the ghost of Deshaun Jackson, you know, 3/4 of a game of Jordan Reed and Pierre Garçon at like age 41 as his guys. You know, the running game was really like an afterthought for them. So he had to carry teams. And yeah, the wins and the playoff wins really didn't come because they didn't have great teams, but it really wasn't at his expense. He had a great playoff game in 2015. They just didn't pull it off because the entire team wasn't good enough. So for me, he's in a good spot because he's going to go to the Vikings, a team who is set up to compete right now. He's got weapons all around him on offense, and you're really going to see Kirk Cousins shine this year. And we're going to say, wow, we really didn't appreciate how good this guy is. All right. So just real quickly here too, which quarterback in this group is most likely to fall back?
If we see another year like last year, I've been waiting to talk about this all day. If we see another year like last year, Jameis Winston there's going to be a lot of questions in Tampa Bay about Jameis Winston, which is crazy. But I mean, we expected him to start taking the jump, and then he really let everybody down. And if he lets everybody down again, there's going to be, you know, there's going to be hell to pay. And it's going, unfortunately, in this league, it all revolves around the quarterback. So when you're winning, he gets too much credit, and when you're losing, he gets too much blame. You know, I don't think it's all Jameis's fault, but if Jameis has another year like he had last year, they're not going to be looking for other quarterbacks, but it's going to be bad.
I think it's mostly Jameis's fault, honestly. Like, it looked like he regressed.
Yep.
I mean, it looked like he said, wow, I'm pretty good at this football thing. You know, I'm just going to go out there and, you know, just go off of what I've done in the past. And it looked like he didn't take that next step in his growth and maturity. So I agree with you from that regard. I think that he's probably on paper the most likely to fall back.
See, the only problem I have with that argument is I thought the same thing. And when you look at it, he improved his completion percentage and cut down his interceptions drastically, like by 7 in the interception category. So it's not all his fault. It really is not. Like, there's got to be some accountability elsewhere. But the problem is that if they go 3-10 again, Jameis Winston's head is going to be on a stick.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. It's the NFL.
I mean, I think a lot of it was run game last year for them, that they had basically nothing. So they could put like 7 guys on Mike Evans, which is what it looked like at most points. But you know, I think their passing game has to be better. If it's not better, if Jameis isn't better, it's all Jameis, because they have a lot of weapons there now. And the run game, by all accounts, should be better because it couldn't get much worse. So if Jameis has even a similar year, I don't expect him to. But if he does, it has to be him.
Yeah, especially when you look at, you know, Stafford and Cousins at the age they are. I kind of do agree that they're largely what they're going to be, which is great. And then you look at the other 3 guys in Wentz, Watson, and Goff, whose careers,
they're all on the rise.
From Wentz and Goff in their second year, and then Watson, very limited sample, but was incredible and unstoppable in his limited sample. So if those 3 guys just progress, I don't see any of the 5. I like Winston this year. I think he's going to have a comeback year, but the other 5 don't make sense as an answer to this question at all.
Yeah. It's kind of a slanted question because there's really only one way you could go with it.
Right.
So, all right. So just real quickly, you can give me names real quickly, but of this group, how many of these guys and who do you feel like could be an elite quarterback in the NFL?
When you say could, it's any of them. If you wanted me to predict which ones will,
yeah, that's where I want you to go.
I think Wentz and Goff. When I don't remember who said it, but somebody alluded to 5 or 6 years from now, Brady's gone, Breeze is gone, Rodgers is probably gone. Who's the conversation about? It's Wilson, Wentz, and Goff to me. So I think Stafford and Cousins are rightly placed, maybe a step above. I think Winston has a shot at a step above. Watson I need to see more of, but Wentz and Goff I think are going to be kind of that major rivalry for a long time in the playoffs.
Wentz, I wrote this down just so I wouldn't forget to say it. I fully believe with all my football knowledge that Wentz and Goff is the next Peyton and Brady.
Yeah.
Like I just believe it. Like, and I think they're both going to be playing at an elite level. I think they're both in perfect situations for each of their respective players. I don't know that I would agree if Wentz went 1 and Goff went to the Eagles. I don't know if I would agree with that. But I think they're both in the perfect situation for each of them, and I think that they are 2 of your top 3 elite quarterbacks of the future.
I agree, and I think that the biggest thing that we didn't really mention, not necessarily we didn't want to, but it's easy to kind of forget it, but like they're set up with great coaches around them to really maximize what they can do.
And
so
defenses important. And skill guys too. I mean, the teams around them are excellent.
It's so important to maximize what you could do. We are seeing that 2 teams identified guys they wanted. They went up and got them. They developed them. They took that next step, and now they're going all in to put all the right pieces just around them to win right away. And this is going to be the new formula.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's those 3 guys. But although I said Winston could be the guy that falls off, he could also just as likely get in my mind. Dude's only 24 years old. It's not like he's 30 years old. It's not like he's up there with Stafford, even Cousins. He's still young, and he has the ability. We've seen it in him, and it's by all accounts he has the smarts too, which is still shocking to me. But he seems to have all the tools like at his ability, at his expense. So I think he could just as likely jump in there.
All right, so here's the rest group, and these are guys who were kind of graded lower at the positional grades, and there's a perception out there that we're not really sure what you have for one reason or another. It could be inconsistent play, it could be downward slope of their career, and we're not going to spend a ton of time here. So based solely on the play of this group of the rest, including Joe Flacco, Eli Manning, Alex Smith, Dak Prescott, Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr, Andy Dalton, Tyrod Taylor, Sam Bradford, Ryan Tannehill, Case Keenum, Blake Bortles. It's a lot of names. All right, so real quickly here, I'm going to ask for 2 answers. We'll button this up real quick. Based solely on their play, who's most likely to lose their starting job, not necessarily because of a rookie underneath them or age dependent, and which of the players in this group do you think could make a resurgence?
Honestly, if you take out all injury factors on this, and you take out the fact that some of these teams drafted a quarterback this year in the first round, I think it's Ryan Tannehill. I think from a living up to the potential and the draft pick at this point, he hasn't. I mean, he doesn't. Unfortunately, he hasn't broke out the way they hoped that he would. And on top of it, they're screwing him big time by removing all talent around him. Like in the last 2 off seasons, they traded away their number 1 running back, their number 1 wide receiver, their number 1 defensive player. Like they've made it impossible for the quarterback to succeed there. And, now Ryan Tannehill's got to live with that.
He can't lose it this year, though, right? Because, I mean, who do they have? Brock? David Fowles? Like who? Bryce Petty? Who's going to take it?
Matty Moore?
He can lose it just because, listen, if they start out and they're 0-7, which I think they very well could be, they're going to go someplace else. They're not just going to let Ryan Tannehill keep rolling out on the field each week. I mean, he's on thin ice as it is, and now you add an 0-7 start to that. You're sending him out there with a piano in his hand. He's going to sink.
Yeah, I agree, but it's just like they don't have anybody. You can't roll somebody else out.
The Jets didn't have anybody 2 years ago, but they were just trying anything they could. Hey, Bryce Petty, go start a game. Anything but trying to start Christian Hackenberg, because they knew that was absolutely the wrong answer.
Anybody but the Hawk.
I think they got a bunch of Hawks on their team now. I guess that it's Flacco. I don't know. It seems like they want out from under him. I don't know.
Yeah,
this bunch is a mess.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to get through it quickly. But like to me, it's Flacco, just because like the money, the fact that there's all this talk that they want to change their approach offensively. I think you pretty much got the best that you're ever going to get out of Flacco.
I'd say.
So for me, for a guy that I think can make a resurgence, I think it would be Derek Carr, just because I think Gruden will get the most out of him. I mean, call me crazy with that, but Gruden's always gotten a decent amount out of some pretty average quarterbacks, and I think Carr could be much better than average. So I'll go there with that.
And I agreed with you 100%. That's who I had written down for resurgence. I think he's the leading candidate in this group.
Yeah, I had Carr as well. I know Rocco thinks adding Jordy Nelson and Martavis Bryant is a joke, to put it nicely. But
he scoffed so hard at that.
Those two with Amari Cooper. I mean, listen, the run game is going to be what it is with Marshawn Lynch and Doug Martin. It's going to be good enough to keep teams at least somewhat honest. I'm excited to see him back healthy, not with a back injury that probably would have knocked most guys out for the year, and he just kept playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agreed with Carr. I think it's unanimous here.
All right, so the rest of these guys are just NFL quarterbacks, so we're going to move on.
Somehow, despite all odds.
No, in fairness, there are some guys like, Mariota, Prescott, like, we got to figure out, like, what are they? But, for the sake of, like, not necessarily spending too much time parked there, let's talk about the young guns here. These guys are hard to really put in a group because whether it's their time in the league, the perception of what they could be here, we don't really know what we're getting there. So the young guns are Patrick Mahomes, Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Mason Rudolph, Baker Mayfield. Look, something that I'm going to mention here as well, like throughout this whole thing, you're probably noticing like we didn't talk about Nick Foles, guys like that. We're going on perceived starters for this year, or guys who have a legitimate shot at being the starter. So that's kind of why we didn't talk about them. But out of the young guns group, which player in this group has the best chance, and I'll say right away, to jump into an upper level?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, the Patrol.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Patty Ice.
How is
Yeah. I love it.
Oh, so I knew this was going to happen.
I hope he's bad just so I don't have to hear these nicknames all the time.
The Patrol.
Didn't we talk about already like how Jimmy had the advantage by coming in when he came in and then playing those 6 games? Oh, by the way, going undefeated in those 6 games or 5 games, whatever it was. And then he's going to have a whole offseason now, and the team around him is going to get better, and we all believe that he has the coach. And I like Patrick Mahomes, but like if the answer has got to be Jimmy G. He's already the starter and already in that position. And
Mahomes is a starter too.
Yeah, and he's been in Kansas City longer than Jimmy's been in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And all right, I love
a better team.
I love Kyle Shanahan, but Andy Reid.
Yeah.
He's surrounded with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, a very underrated Go Dogs, Chris Conley. He has inarguably a top 3, probably the best tight end in the league, and last year's rushing champ behind him. Patty Ice. All the guy could do is throw it 75 yards in the air, and Chris Conley's his slow receiver.
He runs what, a 4.35?
He's like a 4.38, and he's their slow guy.
And not to get away from this, but I should throw this out there. I don't know how much it'll change, but on my copy, which is digital in front of me, I realized that I have Mitch Trubisky on here. I did not have it on the one that I sent out to you guys. So consider him in this group as well.
I would take him over Jimmy Garoppolo right now. No, I'm just playing. That's too far. I'm just playing with that.
That escalated so quickly.
But I think Jimmy G is. I'll even say a 1B answer to this for me. I do really like his situation. Yeah. I like the player a ton. I'm just so high on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I eliminated Allen, Jackson, and Rudolph because I don't think we're going to see those guys this year at all. I do think Darnold and Mayfield have a really good shot of being the 16-game starter there, but I don't love either situation enough to put them over the other two guys for me. Rosen's interesting. I think unless Bradford goes down, he's not going to play, but that's not exactly hoping Cal Ripken misses a game. So, Rosen is interesting because all these guys, these young quarterbacks, what I really love is a run game behind you. And Rosen's got David Johnson. Mahomes has Kareem Hunt. Even Jimmy, I haven't hidden how I feel for Jerick McKinnon. So I like a couple of these guys this year.
All right, since you added Mitchell Trubisky, then I'm going to go ahead and take Patrick Mahomes. So,
Patty Ice.
If for no other reason, I want Miles and me to be right because of how high we were on him last year. So, I mean, anytime I can root for myself, I'm in. So,
yeah,
I've made it very clear how I feel about Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think that he's the guy. But we do need to talk about this for a second. Speaking of how we all felt about Patrick Mahomes last year, didn't Sal say something about him going in the top 10? I don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Let's recount it. Let's see if you can remember.
Yeah, we can recount it because we're the kind of people who apparently just screenshot everything that we ever say.
Thank you, Jesus.
Okay, and then second all on that fact, I said that on an initial mock draft, based on what I was thinking obviously was the landscape of the current top 10, that if he went in the top 10, that
you would drive back and jump in that lake, and you are doing it, sir.
Yes. And then the number one thing that comes to bite everybody is that time unfolds and things change and teams make trades and you get burned by what you said. So yes, I got burnt by what I said, but there was no way that with the landscape of that top 10 that Mahomes was going to be a top 10.
All we need to know is no more excuses or you jumping in that lake.
I mean, if I can get into the private community, I will jump in the lake.
I'll get you in, sir.
All right, there it is. Now it's not only screenshot, it's on air, never to be deleted.
Listen, I'm not like Rocco where I try to twist and bend what happened.
Oh, he jumped in the lake.
He did. And I just told you that I will jump in the lake.
Okay.
You have my word on that.
I got your word on that.
What I'm telling you is that he tried 6 ways from Sunday to reinvent what the initial conversation was on his whole Knicks bet just so that he wouldn't have to do it or so that I would have to do it as well when he knew he clearly lost that bet.
And we have derailed quarterbacks.
All right. So let's talk about the fact that, and I don't want to be a homer here, but if Sam Darnold wins that job, like, I don't think that the talent around him is as bad as other people are making it seem.
No, it's not a bad situation, but please, I mean, tell me it's as good as Kansas City or San Francisco.
Oh no,
you know what I mean? And then you take a year of learning the NFL way. You know, I know Mahomes hasn't been a starter, but he learned.
I think Mahomes and Jimmy G are the obvious 1-2 answer here. I just think that like you add Terrell Pryor, and if we can see Terrell Pryor from 2 years ago rather than Terrell Pryor from last year,
helpful.
Adding to Robbie Anderson, getting back Quincy Enunwa, adding Crowell to pair with Bilal Powell, an improved line in front of them, and what was already a very good defense, but just a defense that spent way too much time on the field. So, like, obviously you're thinking that all these offensive things help. I'm not saying that he's jumping into the Pro Bowl conversation, but if you want to see which one of those next tier rookie guys is going to make the jump, I actually think Darnold has it easier than the other two because I think it's harder for Mayfield to jump Tyrod than it is for Sam to jump McCown at this point. And I think Rosen is not going to jump Sam other than
the incoming injury.
The inevitable injury.
Right.
I don't think Josh Allen is very good. Lamar Jackson, he's got a lot to learn. Mason Rudolph isn't jumping Ben, so other than injury. So honestly, other than the top two guys, I think Sam's got the clearest track to get into, we'll call it the rest group, get out of this young guns group and be just a regular NFL quarterback.
The rest.
I'm gonna go one step further.
Next year when we talk about this, he'll be in the brass ring group of guys who are just waiting.
Yeah, I'm going one step further. I think that it's going to be easy for him to get to that brass ring because I think he's going to show with a team that a lot of people are going to perceive to not be that good, that he's got a lot of really good raw talent. Yep. I think he's going to kind of shed some of this pre-draft stuff and some of the criticism. He's going to show that he's a gamer, that he could do it at this next level. It might not happen right away, but by the time we get to the end of this season, I think we're talking about him as a brass ring kind of guy. And I think it's an obvious one that we're talking about Mahomes. We're talking about Garoppolo. Mahomes is going to be a little tougher just because that division is going to be so good. So, yes, they have a really good team around him. He'll be productive, but will it equate to the wins? I think that the Raiders are going to be better. I think the Chargers are really good. The Broncos could be sneaky good as well. So, Sam has such minimal expectations on him right now that if he shines a little bit with that roster, people are going to be through the roof for him, especially considering it's the New York market.
Yeah. If somehow he pushes them to 9 wins and they're in the playoff conversation, forget about it.
All right. So give me a specific player that you feel really confident about putting in one of these upper tiers, and which tier is it? And what's the time frame that you see it happening? Just real quickly, 45 seconds.
I'm going to give you the end of the 2020 season. So 3 seasons from right now, your top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are Carson Wentz, Andrew Luck, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, and Baker Mayfield.
Ooh.
And Baker Mayfield. The guy has too much talent, raw talent. I know we're blowing up Sam Darnold, and rightfully so. I think he'll be right on the outside of that group. Mayfield has abilities to make plays that nobody outside of Russell Wilson has to make in this league. And then, we're talking about Enunwa and stuff. He's got Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon. They just drafted Nick Chubb to back up Carlos Hyde, David Njoku. And the line is awesome. I think Cleveland, maybe not this year, by 2019, they're going to be squarely in the playoff picture. It's aligning perfectly with Roethlisberger leaving, Flacco leaving. I think the Browns are going to be kind of running that division for a while, and by 2020, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback.
You think better playmaking than Andy?
I guess so. I think Luck and Wentz it's like that sneaky athleticism that we just joke about, and Wilson and Mayfield, it's not very sneaky.
It's evident. It's obvious.
It's the way. It's kind of the base of who they are as players. I think Wentz and Luck are elite in the pocket and special outside of it, whereas the other 2 guys, I think, are elite outside of the pocket and special. I don't know if that special maybe not be the right word, but it's just that playmaking outside of the pocket. You almost know it's either a run-in for a first down or a completion. So, trust me, I'm not knocking Andrew Luck or Carson Wentz athleticism at all, but It's just he reminds me so much of Russ when I watch him play.
Other than the fact that I want Darnold to be in that top 5 group, I think by the end of 2019, we see Jimmy G in the Pro Bowlers group. I think he's in I don't think he'll be in that elite group, but I think he learned a lot from sitting behind Tom and being in the Patriots organization. And I think Kyle Shanahan is the right coach for him to get him to that next step. And I think in 2 years, we're going to be looking at Jimmy G the way we look at Matt Ryan, not elite, but definitely, in that second group. Guy who's going to be in the Pro Bowl on a regular basis, a guy who's going to be in the playoffs on a regular basis,
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna go a little bit overboard here to some extent. I think we're going to be talking about Lamar Jackson within the next 2 years. I just have this weird feeling based on how things unfolded for him through the draft process. The situation that he went to, in Baltimore, right now on paper, that doesn't look like a great fit. But I think they're going to make some systematic changes. I think that defense is really coming on strong. They're building something nice there. if they can get back to kind of being like, a defensive minded, run the ball kind of team, and then add the dynamic playmaking ability of Lamar Jackson, this is a guy who could be a perennial Pro Bowler, as soon as like 3 seasons from now. So I guess, we're talking 2020 season. I think he's a Pro Bowler. I really do. He's in a good situation as long as they commit to making this scheme change like they've talked about. I think it's a perfect chance for him to be a Pro Bowler.
Okay, it's May 20th, 2018.
No, go ahead and screenshot it so you can bring it up every day.
At 10 p.m. at night, South said Lamar Jackson could be a Pro Bowler.
Got it.
Got it.
Yeah, I actually said Jimmy Garoppolo. I know I didn't say him for the last one, but I think that he could make a big jump to – he's not going to be an undefeated player, but I think he's going to take a big jump in his play, has another year experience there, and is really fitting into that Shanahan offense now. And I think because of the jump he can make already, I think he'll attract some pretty good receivers. So a lot of guys are coming up on contract years that they could easily attract with the money that they have and the play that they now have at quarterback and maybe at running back as well.
All right, guys. Well, that is going to do it for this week's edition of the show. We went a little bit long, but we feel like we had a good time talking about the state of the quarterback position. Make sure you check us out next week. We're going to talk about the running back position. That's sure to be a lot of fun for guys who have a lot of love for the running back position. Not that we don't love every position, but there's a special place, I think, in everyone's heart for the running back position. Make sure you keep up with us. Facebook.com/footballgoons, @footballgoons on the Twitter, right here on our YouTube channel as well. You can subscribe, you can comment, you can leave us comments. Listen, we interact on social media. So if you holler at us, we're going to talk back to you, start conversations, keep the dialogue and the exchange open. So if you feel strongly about something that we said tonight, you want to, take an audio clip of something Rocco said and, bring it back every day so that he has to relive it, like he loves to do to me, then go ahead and do it. All right? We're up for that. Make sure you're keeping it locked into footballgoons.com as well all offseason, because we don't take an offseason. The fantasy football content is just really starting to take off. We're going to have updates for you guys a lot more consistently throughout the summer. We'll catch you guys next time.